Hi, welcome to the brush demo for Adobe Photoshop for Art169, or if you stumbled upon this and you want to know more about brushes. So brush tools, they help us apply marks to a document. So think like a pencil or a paintbrush. And so many people, when they think about the brush tool, they immediately start thinking about painting, because it's literally the paintbrush tool, so that's where your mind first goes. And you think, well, I don't like to draw, I don't paint, like I'm a digital artist, I edit photographs, or I'm a photographer, I don't need to draw. But knowing how to understand the brush tool is very important, and drawing is a skill that you learn, so always keep practicing drawing, and then eventually you will be good at it. If you're not, you have to keep practicing. But like the brush tool has so many functions. So we'll look at some basics. We're going to talk about what the brush tool can offer us, and then we're going to talk about creating new brushes, which is really fun, how to create brushes from photographs, how to import new brushes as well. Adobe CC 2018 has a new way of saving brushes. I will post a link in Canvas for you all. So, because I'm not 100% familiar with it yet. It's you'll make it into groups. We'll talk about it briefly. So if you go to B, which is your brush tool, you can increase or decrease your brush size, and you have a brush. So I have a random brush kind of going on. You know what? I'm going to make a new layer. Go to my history, I'm back. Because I always want to start on a new layer. I'm working on that background layer, which is going to make it a little difficult. But I have my brush tool there, and it's actually a different brush than what normally standard. I was playing around with brushes later. And I'm just doing a Command A, select all, deselect. But if I look at my control panel again, which is the top thing, is how you edit your functions. You have, you can choose your brushes, and you may have different brushes than me if you're a person who downloads brushes, but you can see I can click and drag. If I hold down Shift while if I click and Shift, it'll do a direct line from where I'm doing. If I'm clicking and I'm holding down Shift as I draw, it'll give me, if I draw, hold down Shift and draw, it'll give me a straight line. So under mode, you have blending modes. These are kind of how to blend the color as you paint. So if you get into like digital painting, this would be really fun to play with. Remember, blending modes are how light passes through a layer in your layer blending mode. So if you see, they're the same functions. So these are definitely fun to play around with. Doesn't really work too well. Here we go. See, it's kind of having fun. So we've really created something completely new and unique. So we have opacity. So the opacity is the transparency of the color that we apply. So if we lower it, anytime you paint over an area as we're holding down the mouse, the opacity doesn't exceed the level. So if I'm painting and I go back over, it's not building up because I'm still painting. But if I click and go again, it's a brand new brush setting. So I can kind of build on if I have to keep clicking. So I'm going to pull my opacity up. We're going to skip this guy. This is for pressure sensitivity, for pressure for opacity. So if you're using a drawing tablet, which I am not, I probably should have pulled mine out for this demo, but I did not. Flow. So flow sets the rate which color is applied as we move the pointer over an area. So as we paint over an area while holding down the mouse button, the color will build up. So let's set the opacity at 36 and the flow at 36 as well. And we have to lower the opacity for the flow. So It's going to slowly build up as we're holding down. See, it's supposed to just kind of build up on its own, but it doesn't want to do that for me. But that's how it's supposed to work. This is airbrush tool, so this is kind of like an airbrush setting. So it simulates painting with an airbrush. If we move the pointer over an area, the paint will build up. So if I kind of lower things down, so I'm going to just build, it's supposed to build up, but it doesn't really want to do that for me. My flow and opacity don't work. They don't want to work for me. There's auto erase if you're using the pen tool, which you're not. So we're just going to pick the pencil tool. So if we toggle down to the pencil, we'll do like auto erase. So it'll paint the background color. Paints the background color over the foreground color. Select the foreground and background. So the pencil tool I don't like because it's so rough edge. So if you even look at some of your smoother brushes, I'll just increase. It's so pixely, but that might be a fun look for you. So there's tablet pressure sensitivity. So again, if you're using a drawing tablet, that would be good for you. We have this smoothing options for the smoothing. And we'll talk about that a little later. So if you click on this, you have your preset brushes, and you can actually zoom it out. So you have your brush size, your angle of your brush, your size. Of course, you can always use your left and right brackets like this. So this decreases the size of the brush, and this increases. So if I'm doing my right bracket, remember it increases, left it decreases. The hardness is like the edges on the outside of your brush. So it's only for square and round brushes, so it temporarily changes the amount of anti-aliasing in the brush tool. Essentially, it's the outside. So if it's a super smooth brush, I'm going to make this nice and big. Kind of see, it's nice and soft. But if the hardness is up, it's got really sharp edges. So you can download brushes off the internet, just like downloading fonts. Remember, we talked about downloading fonts, and they have instructions and stuff. So when you download brushes, you want to keep them on your flash and hard drive so you can keep them with you to use at whatever computer you're using. So if you're using the computer in the classroom, you have them with you. So if you go Window, Brushes, it will open up your brush panel, and it's gonna pop in oh so soon. There we go. So this is the new brush panel. If you're not used to this, you may have not upgraded to 2018. We are using an older version of Photoshop. So this is where is not the importing brushes, but sort of the brush panel has been improved in 2018. There's been a lot of controversy about this in the message boards for Adobe about the 2018 brushes. A lot of people lost all the brushes they had downloaded. People were upset about that. A lot of people don't like the setup, and people love the setup because you can put things in folders and you can group things, which is really nice. So we're not going to get into this right now, but if you have your own Creative Cloud account, you can get more brushes. So there's Photoshop imports has their own brushes they would like you to use. Just like Typekit, if you're familiar with Typekit, it's a good way to import fonts within Photoshop without having to close it out and re-download. So Adobe bought this huge brush company called Kyle's Photoshop Brush Packs, and you can get them. So if you go here to get more brushes, it opens up Adobe's website and you can import them through there. And if you're more interested, it's in the PDF, but also you can go to Adobe's website or just play around with it yourself, but we're not going to do that right now. So that's the way you can get some brushes from Adobe if you don't like the ones that come with the brushes, but you can also download them off the internet. So I'm going to go to brush settings. So this is your brush settings panel. So your brushes, which is very similar to this guy, but if we go to brush settings, you have a whole panel which makes your stuff a lot more customizable, even more than you thought. So these are the different types of settings you can apply, and you can lock and unlock ones depending on the brushes. These are the brush tips that you can choose from, that you can modify. This is sort of a preview on how it will look. And here's your brushes panel. So standard size, so you can make something big or little right there. So it's just the size of the brush, so you can drag the slider, open up the pixels. You are also able to do that here as well. So you can do flip X or flip Y. So let's pick, my dog says hi. All right, so we have this that looks like a tree branch. So if we flip X, it makes it look a different way. Flip Y. So it kind of rotates the brush, so you're not set to it in the way that it is. So you can also, the angle, so if I want to tilt it up, to get the precise angle that I want it to be. Some drawing tablets will do you can set it where it will do this on your drawing tablet, where it'll recognize that you've rotated the tablet. I'm not sure the ones in the class that we use have this function, but definitely keep a look at that. So roundness is the ratio between the brush's long and short axes. So it kind of plays around. You can also, again, that right there will adjust it. Hardness, we don't have a function in this because it's not a square or a round brush. So if we do a round brush, again, like before, and the PDF has pictures as well. So spacing, so let me go back to that tree branch that we were on. So if we lower the spacing, it's kind of like how many times when we drag a new one will appear. It'll make it smoother. However, when the spacing's lower, it actually does, depending on your graphics card and the type of computer you're using, how quickly it will apply the mark. But you can play around with those settings. So let's take a bristle brush, so it looks kind of more like a paintbrush. So you had to have more options here. So this is the type of brush. So if you're a painter, this will definitely make sense for you. So you can, the shape of the brush, how many bristles, so if it's really bristly or less bristles, the length of the bristles, the thickness of the bristles, not to be confused by size, it's just thickness of bristles, the stiffness versus very fluffy, and the angle, and you can play around with spacing. Again, all these things are creating new ways to mark on our paper or our canvas without us really even thinking about it, which is really cool. So we have some other settings here. So there's shape dynamics, and sometimes you only have, so play around with how it jitters, scattering, so it's kind of how it throws itself around. So if you're using a brush, like the leaves, they're scattery leaves. So that's using a higher scatter. You can apply textures to it, and that could be something you're playing around with. Dual brush, so it will just add extra brushes. Color dynamics, so it will just kind of mix around a little. But there's a lot of these different options. You can really take a single brush and create it into something new. So creating a new brush. So a lot of people will use this, a lot of photographers will use this to get like a logo on things. So I have a photograph here that I've kind of masked out and cropped in. And then I made it desaturated because color doesn't really count when you're making brushes. And this is kind of flat once I've desaturated it, so I kind of up the black and white points with my levels and a layer mask, and then play around some brightness and contrast. And for some reason I want to make this into a brush. So I can't do it with all these separate layers, so I'm just going to select all by shift clicking the top and bottom. I'm going to do a Command J to copy everything, and a Command D just to flatten that layer. I'm going to hide these layers, and then you can't see it, but I'm going from Edit, Define Brush Preset. I'm going to name it Stat Candy. So now I have my new brush. And you can take things that you've drawn in, you can take things that you've photographed, things you scanned in, you can take, you can apply marks with markers and pens and paint, scan them in, make them into a paintbrush, and then you have a new brush. You can apply all these, maybe I want to throw some scattering around. So it just kind of scatters everything around. Maybe some color dynamics. And just kind of, this itself is kind of building kind of this interesting texture. And then maybe I'll just kind of, and just this weird candy stack thing that I've made. And this could be a fun way to start like building something a little different, and you know, this all from this one paintbrush, and this is looking very painterly too. And I think it's pretty neat so far. So importing brushes that you've downloaded off the internet. So let's say you went to one of the many websites, and if you just Google Photoshop brushes, there's so many that you can download. So if you click these three lines, actually I'm going to go to my brushes panel, you can go down to import brushes. I have some I've already downloaded right there. It's going to think about it. All right, so I have some brushes I downloaded. They're ABR files. And I should just be able to click open. And they're in a file. And look, I have all these new brushes that I can add. Maybe I'll do it on a different layer and play around with some blending modes. But there's so many ways, and this is just, and I'm not a painter, I'm not a person who does a lot of drawing. This is a way I can really kind of add some different technique to my canvas. So play around with some brushes. I will do a Illustrator brush demo soon. And I hope you enjoy. Download some brushes. Think about how brushes can apply with marks. This is going to be great for set 2. That first one right there, I think it's 2.1 or 2.2. And thinking about how we're going to apply all these marks. So I hope you enjoy and play around with some brushes.